Let's get to our panel discussion now. The Madlanga Commission again heard explosive testimony today linking alleged criminal mastermind Vusimuzi Cat Matlala and another senior police official. Brigadier Rachel Matjeng denies allegations of bribery and a conflict of interest relating to the multi-million rand Medicare 24 tender. Matjeng defended funds she received from Matlala as gifts during her ongoing on and off relationship and romantic relationship that is with him. So to unpack today's testimony, we are joined by University of Johannesburg criminologist Nirmala Gopal and independent crime and violence analyst Dr Chris de Kock. Right, a very good evening to both of you, Prof and Doc. Thank you so much for your time and for us to unpack today's proceedings at the Madlanga inquiry of Commission. Let's start with you, Prof Gopal, just with regards to Brigadier Matjeng as a witness. How significant is her testimony, especially at this part of the Commission, in terms of what we've heard so far and some of the relationships that already we've drawn the web between Vusimuzi Cat Matlala and other players in this instance?
Good evening, Katlego, and good evening to the viewers. Yeah, I think very significant. Her testimony is extremely significant, especially, like you say, at this part of the testimony. I think, but, I want to take it a step further to talk about the fact that the way in which she's presenting her testimony, or presented her testimony, I think once again reveals Cat Matlala's infiltration into SAPS. So I think that's more critical in terms of her testimony today.
And maybe let's expand on that, Dr. de Kock, with regards to how she structured it. Is there a strategy? We saw the commissioners not so convinced about the romantic relationship that she said to have had with Vusimuzi Cat Matlala.
Yeah, good evening again to the viewers and yourself. And I've always used this as a footnote and say, for the last 4 months we have heard so many allegations, but unfortunately all of these allegations will have to be proved in court. And hopefully we will see that very soon, because we had that groundbreaking thing last Thursday, and some people will be investigated and hopefully soon be charged. But I think she is actually playing around. And I think the commission is very, very skeptical that this is a romantic relationship. I mean, they've analyzed it quite intensively. And I think she used this so-called romantic relationship to hide her relationship where she gets a lot of money and she helped Mr. Malala to get certain perks. I really think this is the case. I actually think today's whole testimony actually was very difficult to follow. It was not as interesting as Mr. Sononowitz, Major General Sononowitz, just before her, because I think that was a much more interesting situation. But it is clear, as the Prof have said, that, I mean, this man, this underworld figure, had a influence and an infiltration and a penetration in the South African police service as no other underworld figure, I think, had before that time. And it seems our memory is very short. If we can think back, one of the best commissioners, I was there in the police service at that time, one of the best commissioners I ever served under was the late Jackie Salebi. He was a wonderful police officer, although he came from the civilian side. But unfortunately, he had a corrupt relationship. And that was what he was found guilty of, a corrupt relationship with a mafia figure, or Mr. Angelotti, he's still there. And for that, he went to jail, and unfortunately, he couldn't face the jail. He was taken to home, and he died there. And I say again, one of the best commissioners fighting crime, we never had that in the South African Police Service. But this relationship, in the end, caused his end. And I think all of these figures that are now giving evidence I forgot about that. That was about 10 years ago, or a little bit more than 10 years ago. And we should never allow senior officers. I mean, we are talking of major generals, lieutenant generals, brigadiers. These are the three most senior ranks. And they've got a relationship, in this case, a so-called romantic relationship with an underworld figure. And unfortunately, they only realize now there's a problem when he's arrested. I mean, then I wonder, where's our intelligence? The intelligence should have warned them, listen, cut this relationship with immediate effect.
And she even claims to not have known of any of his underworld and underhanded alleged dealings. Prof, I mean, if we just stay on the issue of this relationship between Brigadier Matjeng as well as Vusimuzi Cat Matlala, from a criminology point of view and in terms of how she's presented this relationship and some of the questions asked by the commissioners to say that, but even in your text and how you communicate, there's no indication of the two of you seemingly having a romantic relationship. There's no endearment even in how you speak to each other. When you would look at such evidence, what would it point to from your perspective?
So I think very clearly, and as Dr. de Kock has also demonstrated, very clearly she's, I mean, it's a strategy that she's using. And I think it's probably a strategy that they decided in advance. And that was and part of the main purpose for the strategy is to make it seem plausible so that the communication, the favors, etc., could be plausible. So I mean, that's the most important bit for why she's using this particular strategy. But as Dr. de Kock also mentioned, the commissioners are really intelligent people. And having been, I mean, they're experts in their field as well, and they've listened to, I'm sure, thousands of witnesses, etc. And it's quite easy for them, and I think like today we watched, it was quite easy for them to poke holes in her testimony and to make her realize that what she's doing is being extremely dishonest. And yes, by and large, she's using the whole romantic relationship to absolve herself and, from the fact that she was actually receiving monies in a corrupt, it was a corrupt relationship and it was bribery really. So that's exactly what she's doing. I mean, one of the things that stood out for me is when she was sitting on the panel and this, and his name appeared as part of the bidders. And the fact that she mentions to a colleague, we are in and out of a relationship or we were in a past relationship, and the colleague says, just behave professionally. I mean, that is quite bizarre by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I see you laughing there, Doc, because not only is it bizarre, but it's also quite worrying because you touched earlier on the relationship of Jackie Silebi and Glenn Agliotti and just how we see these relationships between what we'd say the good and the bad within the police service still continuing. What does this say about the culture of not only even policemen at the lower levels, but right through to the top where just morally that relationship to have with someone of Cat Matlala's nature?
Yeah, well, it is very worrying. I think it's very worrying because if the underworld or the organized crime, sometimes they have a facade of business and as business people, but if they can corrupt the top structure of the South African police service, they can really get away with anything, even murder. And in this case, there is quite a few murders that is on the table, drugs, CIT robberies, all of these things that was mentioned by General Mangwanazi right at the beginning, and that is very worrying. We should think of a police service where a person who is a general, lieutenant general, or major general, should be absolutely neutral politically and I mean, this is the ideal, and should never in any way can be corrupted by any money, that is put on the table. That's what we need. Because at that level, if they are corruptible at that level, can you think of a station level, you know, where really crime is fought, is at the station level. If you have a detective service, which if a docket comes onto the table, and that family can pay, this is now even a murder within a family situation, and that family can pay a few 100,000 of rand, and this detective just make this docket disappear, or he, to use a very bad word, they mess up the whole investigation right from the start, from the scene for the next few weeks, and that case will never stand up in court. I'm worried about that, because I think at station level, there's much more of a chance that these things can happen.
That's right. And very concerning. I mean, Prof, you mentioned earlier the issue about the tender, and let's just talk about the tender award and the integrity around that. I mean, considering the fact that Cat Matlala's company was awarded that 360 million rand health contract, what safeguards are typically in place in order to prevent undue influence or just corruption in such procurement processes?
So I think in an ideal situation, it would, I mean, each the bid evaluation or bid adjudication committee would have a list of criteria. And I think most importantly, and I think, I mean, of course, it would mean that you don't, that you know, it's value for money, for example, that you would deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on. But of course, there are also the technical and administrative issues like your BEE compliance, past records of having delivered on what you had promised to deliver on, etc. But I think in this case, what is very critical for us, Katlego, is that clearly what we are seeing in as far as Cat Matlala is concerned is that this is a person who's been receiving tenders from various institutions, but I think specifically targeting SAPS. And what I think the bid adjudication committee had failed to do was due diligence in terms of why are these awards being made to one specific individual. And I mean, I think that is completely unethical to award the same person over and over again.
And I mean, Prof, I mean, Dr. de Kock, when we look at this awarding of the tender and when it came back that Cat Matlala had zero performance with regards to the deliverables of this tender, what does it say when Matjeng then guides him in terms of how he should respond to SAPS to convince them that the decision they are making of withdrawing is incorrect?
This is actually laughable. I mean, I mean, how can you guide now this guy, which is not delivering, from inside the SAPS? You are now telling him how to get out of this mess. I really think this is, I think, to be very honest, I think after this, and again, I say allegations is allegations, and what we hear before the commission is allegations, but the Prof have already referred to that these commissioners, I mean, they are not here from yesterday. They have a wealth of knowledge and practical experience, and clearly they don't believe her. But I think when she leaves, he still have to come back. I think they can just as well do a referral to that task team that is going to be formed, or hopefully is already halfway formed, to do further investigation, because she's clearly in trouble. I mean, helping this guy, even if he can't deliver it.
Prof, when we look at these instances, and of course it wouldn't only be, I mean, you speak of a bid adjudication committee, so it's not only Brigadier Matjeng that would be sitting there and looking through these processes and ultimately awarding a Medicare 24 of this tender. What does it say to us about the system in its entirety and all of those that sit around the table with regards to their contributions, whether it's to whistleblow or even just calling out?
Yes, I think, I mean, of course, I think a disclaimer I'd like to share upfront is that it might not be that all members on that bid adjudication committee are corrupt
Certainly. Yes.
yeah, so I think that's very important. But I think what is critical though is that there may be undue influence on other members who are part of the committee. However, I think, I mean, of course, and one of the greatest challenges that we're having in South Africa, and we know this from the recent past of those who gave, witnesses who have already been murdered, and some who, like, for example, yesterday, I think, where we had a witness who had a hit on him. So whistleblowers are extremely scared for their lives, and legitimately so, justifiably so. So I think unless we can have, really proper whistleblowing protection and guaranteed that there will be no exposure, there will be no leaks in terms of who the whistleblowers are, etc., it's going to be very difficult for us to root out corruption in as far as these processes are concerned. But just to say, yes, there could be undue influence, there could be power relations, and all of those could contribute to the committee then ultimately being influenced by those in power or those in positions of influence to make decisions that are not healthy.
Well, when we return, I just want us to expand a little bit on payments and gratification, and especially just the accountability when it comes to police officers receiving any kinds of gifts from members of the public. We are continuing our discussion this evening. That testimony that we saw earlier today from Brigadier Rachel Matjeng at the Madlanga Commission. Do stay with us, and remember, you can also send us your thoughts this evening. But for now, let's take a quick break. Welcome back. Our panel of experts today are unpacking and analyzing the Madlanga Commission that took place earlier today, where we saw Brigadier Rachel Matjeng take the stand. We are joined by University of Johannesburg criminologist Nirmala Gopal and independent crime and violence analyst Dr Chris de Kock. So let's just get into the issue of gratification, and let's begin with you, Dr de Kock. When it comes to those monies from the 100,000 rands that she claimed was meant to help her with respect to her car, and then there was another 200,000 rands which was made apparently through the Osizweni meat market, but the owner of that account refused to give the money to Brigadier Matjeng because Cat Matlala had owed that person the money as well. So when we just look at all of these gratifications, what constitutes a plausible explanation for the payments, one that were made into the Osizweni meat market account, and why does the Commission see these potentially corrupt gratification?
No, I think it should never be allowed. It should never be allowed, and I'm certain these commissioners see right through it. I mean, at that level of brigadier, which is about the third level from the top, I mean, these amounts are quite substantial amounts, and it should never be allowed. That is why people at that level get quite a good salary. Don't make a mistake. Police officers are at the higher level, but even at the lower level, get a good salary. I mean, better than many other public servants. And it is to ensure, and I always said, people come to me and say, yeah, but it is about salaries and so on and so on. Salaries, even if you increase the salaries of the South Africa Police Service today make it double, it won't end corruption. It won't get in gratification, which is corruption. I mean, if you give something from the side to a police officer, it's the same when a police officer stops you in a roadblock, you have too much to drink, and here you take out 800 rand or a wallet and you pass the wallet on to the police officer, and he say you can go and kill somebody down the road. The same apply to the National Commissioner. The same apply to lieutenant generals, major generals, brigadiers, and we can work it down the ranks. So it should never happen. Even this thing that we have heard in this commission and at the ad hoc committee in Cape Town of handbags. I think it was General Paslani who came there or somebody else, and he then said, no, these people, the very same people like General Mangwanazi and Masamola and so on, they went there and they received handbags, very expensive handbags. Well, I don't know. Again, it's allegations, but clearly it's not correct. Even a handbag, you have to declare that at least and say, sorry, I've received this handbag. I couldn't say no for it, but
Right.
here's the handbag. And then the top management will say, no, keep the handbag. It's not such a bad thing.
So, Dr. de Kock, I mean, you speak about people getting good salaries, particularly within the South African Police Service. And even if you were to double those salaries, the kind of corruption would still persist. Has this been the general culture?
Yeah, I think it is the culture of corruption, of unfortunately organized crime in South Africa have become absolutely in the last 7 to 8 years. I think it have doubled and tripled. Organized crime, unfortunately, is in all the sectors of the economy. And that goes with blackmail, with bribes, with all of these kind of things. I'm clear. If we can double or triple the salaries, money is not going to be the barrier or the solution to the problem. There's two solutions. South Africa is unfortunately have become very materialistic. We are one of the most materialistic countries in the world. I would make that statement. All of us are materialist. And that unfortunately brings the whole thing of greed. I want to have more money. I want not only to have one Lamborghini, but I want 3 Lamborghinis. So that brings greed. And unfortunately, police officers are in the very same situation. And then they become corruptible, unfortunately. We will, and there's no patriotism. Police officers are not patriots. They said there's a lot which are patriots. Let me immediately say I'm wrong. It's wrong to make the statement which was made at the commission a few weeks ago that all the police or most of the police in Gauteng is corruptible. I don't believe that. Here in my station, there are a lot of good police officers. But unfortunately, materialism, a lack of patriotism, a greed have developed in this organization and in many other government departments.
Yeah. Prof, I mean, Doc speaks of this moral decay, and I see that you're very amused because he speaks of there being not any patriotism or most of those that serve as many of these government officials, materialistic, a country that has moved towards greed. But when police officers are given such gifts or gratification, how do you think they should handle particularly financial transactions that would be perceived as gratification, especially when linked to individuals of criminal activities?
So, Katlego, I think that there will definitely exist a protocol within SAPS, and there will be a maximum amount that a gift is, that, they can accept as a gift. And beyond or above that amount, they will have to declare whether it's monetary or non-monetary. So that definitely exists. But part of the reason that I was smiling is, I think it's really important for us to be able to, I think it's important for us not to leave this panel discussion by providing information that may not necessarily be completely what the scenario is. I think the materialism, etc., has always existed. The corruption in SAPS, which was previously the South African Police Force, was, was equally corrupt, but through a different lens. We know we can attribute, like, for example, apartheid-linked killings, political killings, etc., that took place during that space of time. I think we cannot move away and shift to a new context and say that it's just the current police service. Remember, many of the police officers that we inherited into the new system also belonged to the apartheid era policing. So I think we've got to make it very clear to South Africans that we are not saying that in the new dispensation, corruption suddenly crept into the system. It was there. I think what's very important, though, and as a rider that I would like to include, is that this culture of loyalty, this culture of shielding each other has always existed and continues to exist, especially within services or among police officers. they're extremely loyal to each other. And I think that's one of the reasons why we find so few people who will actually blow the whistle on police officers, whether it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or currently. I think it's very similar. The culture is very similar in terms of how they protect each other.
You raise very interesting points there, Prof, with regards to how it manifests differently, but ultimately the type of corruption has existed in different phases and different forms over time. So, Doc, what do you then think would be the steps that need to be taken to ensure accountability for officials, especially those that are involved in irregular procurement and payments such as these?
Well, yeah, it's actually a difficult question, but I think one should do proper vetting. One should properly look at where this person is coming from, the whole history of this person as that person is going up the ranks. And one should try to get people who are really dedicated to their job. And as I say, and I want to repeat, maybe I went overboard with the materialism and corruption, and I agree. It's not only in South Africa, it's actually all over the world. Corruption in police services are a major problem. So it's not only in South Africa. But I think one should really look at the people that you appoint in any place where there is procurement, where there's money involved, large sums of money. I think really you should look very carefully that you have a dedicated person, a person which have high moral standards and would be not taking bribes, and especially not the bribes that we have heard of today. And it's true, there is a protocol, and you have to declare things. And I mean, police officers along the way received a handbag, to go back to that example. I'm not worried about that, but at least he or she should be open about it, and it should be declared, and there should be a limit to those things. But I think also, and that is amazing, it's actually amazing, because in the times of Commissioner Salebi, to go back to him, which was a very, very good crime preventer. He was especially very much focused on crime prevention at station level. But if you go back to him, I mean, the people in the police, intelligence within the police, were aware that he had this corrupt relationship. I can't believe that we hear all of these things now for 4 months, as if it occurred only, we only became aware 4 months ago, or we only became aware of this when General Mangwanazi on a Sunday morning decided to drop the bomb in Durban. I really, for me, I can't believe that we have this intelligence service, even the SSA, outside of the police and other IPID and all of these, that they were not aware and go to the National Commission and say, yeah, there's even a romantic relationship between this brigadier and a person which we really question. I mean, that's amazing to me. And that's actually, I even want to say, people that are now up in arms, because why are people now being investigated while the commission is even still on, like what we saw yesterday and what we saw in the court of the High Court in Johannesburg today. That you say, now I don't want to go because the commission haven't heard my story, but now I'm under investigation. I mean, this is ridiculous. They should have been under investigation long ago, before General Mangwanazi dropped the bomb on 7th of July last year.
Speaking about General Mangwanazi dropping bombs in that media briefing, Prof, I mean, we heard today from the ad hoc committee where Diane Collar-Barnard from the DA appeared, and the provincial commissioner accused her of leaking classified information. How serious are such allegations, especially in terms of national security as well as political integrity?
Yeah, Katlego, I think the act itself is very serious. The fact that, I mean, that you would have exposed witnesses, police officers who are busy with the investigation, etc., to a huge, to a very high risk. I mean, they could be killed, etc. So that was, in my view, as a criminologist, that was rather irresponsible if it's proven to be true, extremely irresponsible. However, you know, and I said this earlier today, she might not necessarily have understood the impact. If it's proven to be true, she might not necessarily have understood the security risk impact of what she had done. And I reflected on her career as well, and you know, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it seemed almost like she acted like a journalist, because that's, you know, part of her profile as well. And when I say journalist, you know, some journalists want to have, you know, believe in sensationalism, etc.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to understand what she did within her, you know, the context of who she is. But definitely, for me, irresponsible behavior if it's shown to be true.
And Doc, maybe your opinion on this. I mean, the professor says that she may not have understood the gravity of her actions. What role do you think, especially politicians like Kola Barnard, play, whether nationally or internationally, in either exposing or concealing infiltration and corruption within the system?
Yeah, I really, I mean, I know her from the days that I was in the police and I had to go to their portfolio committee very regularly on the crime statistics and crime and all of those things. And actually, I think maybe she did this without knowing what she's doing. But the fact is, she was in the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence. And she's constantly, during the whole day, she said, no, what is happening in that committee stays in that committee. So clearly, she knows this is of high secrecy. It's top secret. And you can't just say, no, now it's in the public domain, and now you want to use this for political gain. And make as if you are a whistleblower. We don't know, and I'm still I mean, we will still hear eventually. That building which was bought here in Pretoria North, what was the idea of crime intelligence buying that building? They could have used it, basically, they could have used it as a safe house, as a place where they train undercover operatives, as a place where they sort of orientate undercover operatives. And by just putting that in the media, well, that money is wasted. Clearly, I mean, now they can't use it for that anymore because the criminals will know that. You see, I think people don't know what is undercover operations, how intelligence work, and then they want to say something about it, and in the process they can do quite a lot of damage. So on the one hand, I feel sad for her, but on the other hand, I think it was good that she was grilled, but she stick to her guns. But unfortunately, she can't, as a parliamentarian who were in the Joint Standing Committee, she can't say, now when it is in News 24, I can run with it and do some things with it. But in any case, she will have to face the consequences, whatever the consequences will be.
Well, that
I think
is for certain.
the other parliamentarian is even in bigger trouble because he went even further than just the building in Pretoria North.
And that is Fadel Adams, who is still to appear before that ad hoc committee. We have a caller on the line, V from Durban. A very good evening to you. What are your thoughts today?
What are my thoughts? I think the Madlanga Commission there's more positives coming out of it, but I think that the witnesses are corrupting some of the information, and that's making it worse. I just have a fancy towards the evidence leaders, and I haven't had much exposure to the ad hoc committee. So I think they're doing a fantastic job, and we're just waiting for the outcome of what's going to happen at the end of the conclusion of the commission.
Well, most certainly, V. These are very two important processes that are happening concurrently, and we certainly do hope that the results that will be yielded from both of them will end up seeing South Africans gain their trust back with the criminal justice system. I'd like to thank our analysts for this evening for joining us and giving us your expert analysis. We certainly do appreciate the time that you put in watching these processes in order to give us a quality analysis. Thank you for joining us.